Justin R. White says, do you subscribe to the notion that violent video games desensitize children to violent actions by themselves or others? I think I do, within limits. I think if I had to describe the effect that video games have on childlike violence, I would say it only has an effect when you get right to the far edge of the bell curve. In other words, if you have like a bell curve, and here are kids that are extremely resistant to any idea of video games. Their moral core is absolutely rock solid. Then here's the giant bump of people, in the middle, and then as we get down to the front, you get to kind of the loners, and the people have essentially zero sense of self, poorly raised, bad parenting, that kind of thing. I think that it can push the whole video game violence can push the whole bell curve towards the more violent, but that the actual effects in terms of acting out into the real world are only shown at the very far end of the 3 or 4 standard deviations out on the edge. I do know that there have been many moments in video games that I've played where I said, I'm glad I'm an adult experiencing this moment. And I don't think that I do think that on some level some of this stuff can have a bad effect on people. Ultimately, I believe, of course, people are responsible for their own actions. I don't think video games make people murder people. I don't think movies make people murder people. But I do think that movie violence and gun violence can, in fact, desensitize people to the consequences of that somewhat. With that said, I'm about as opposed to banning video games as I am to banning anything else that people like. I think as a general rule, these parental advisories are a pretty good thing. I think parents have a right to know in the same way they have a right to know in terms of the entertainment content that they're taking in. So, I think, I was having this discussion with Andrew Clavin yesterday on a couple of Clavin Whittle segments we shot. We were talking about this idea of virtue and sin and control, elimination of sin from culture by law, that sort of thing. And we both kind of came to the same conclusion that neither of us particularly like Las Vegas, but we would defend the right for Vegas to be there. You should have a right to go to Vegas. Most people who go to Vegas, have a good time, lose some money, and they have a blast. I have a hard time sometimes walking through Vegas without feeling that everything I'm looking at is the result of somebody's misspent college education fund. But, that may be me being a little over melodramatic about things. Likewise with video games, I think it's possible they do some harm. I don't know that they do more good than harm. I can't look back, with the exception of flight sims. With the distinct exception of flight sims. Well, let's just go to shooters, okay? Because I got a lot of SimCity, that kind of thing. I don't know about shooters. I think there's a lot of danger there. By the way, I mentioned Sims like SimCity, and that led me to think about The Sims. And The Sims got me to think about Second Life, which I've never played. And I know I'm going to upset some people here, and I'm probably going to get the same kind of reaction I got from the bronies. Although I don't equate the two, because I think bronies are grown people acting like, grown men are acting like 6-year-old girls. But Second Life, for those of you who don't know, is not really a game so much as it's a more realistic, simulated world. Than The Sims are. At least it was. And Second Life is a world where you can become a character and move around through this alternate universe. And you can decide how you want to look, and you can decide what kind of clothes you want to wear. You can decide what kind of house you want to buy. You can build houses. One of the things that's most fascinating to me about Second Life is that Second Life was trading real-world money for in-game money. In other words, if you wanted an island or something, you could pay $500 of real money and get your own island to live on. And people were setting up stores inside the game where if you went into a store and you wanted to put wings on your avatar, they would cost you $50, which you would trade for real-world money. Now, that aspect of it I actually liked. I thought that was kind of cool and revolutionary. But what I don't like about Second Life is the same thing I don't like about excessive narcotic use or excessive use of the lottery. I'm all fine with the occasional pot. Look, I'm fine with however much pot smoking you want to do, however much drinking you want to do, however much heroin you want to do. Ultimately, when it's all said and done, that's your business. It's really not my business at all. So I'm not talking about banning these things. However, this is exactly what we were talking about, Clavin and I, yesterday, is that we feel that we have a moral obligation to protest these things, but no moral right to ban them. I think that's exactly right. We have, I think, a moral obligation to point out the dangers of them, but no moral authority or right to ban them or stop you from doing them. So in the same way that excessive eating or excessive gambling or excessive sexual activity or excessive alcoholism or excessive narcotics or whatever are bad for you, and there's no question that they are. It's when they become a vice because you do it too often. I would see Second Life, and I would see something I really didn't like at all. And what I saw in Second Life was I saw people in the most extreme cases, although I bet it was a significant portion of the Second Life players, who had essentially on some level, I think, given up on the real world and had decided that they were going to live in this world, that they would come home from work at the end of the day, and they don't, and that their avatar in this world was going to be where they were going to interact, it was where they were going to put their sense of self-respect and so on. And I just find that really alarming. Hey, some guy named Zachariah Tymons said in the comment section here, so in other words, Bill doesn't like the escapism aspect of video games. On the contrary, that's why you play video games. That's why you play. You play to escape. You play to get into an airplane, fly a 737 or an F-16 or an F-15 or a SPAD, or you get into the game to take out terrorists, and you get into game to solve puzzles. You get in the game, do all that other stuff. I don't have any problem with escapism. That's why I do it. The entertainment is escapism. I'm in the escapism business. What I'm concerned about is having that escapism become your primary life. So it's your job that becomes the secondary life, or your real world is the torture and the torment. You get off of work, come home, and heat up your TV dinner and immediately immerse yourself. Now, if you're immersing yourself in something like, first-person shooter or something like that, then that's entertainment and games. I think the thing about Second Life that bothered me so much was that it was in fact a second life. It was your evenings are being spent interacting in a way that I feel you should be interacting in the real world. And believe me, if anybody understands this, it's me. I understand not going out to bars. You find this really hard to believe, but I mean, I'm a really, really shy guy. I don't walk into a room and just walk up to people. I'm not, well, I am now, obviously, but I mean, back in the day. So I don't know. I've just seen in Second Life, and I suppose it's true in The Sims as well, signs of people just giving up on that world and getting into this world as a narcotic, where it's not escapism so much as it's sanctuary. It's like, this is where I live now. We're going to see this trend grow stronger. And what was that movie? Was it Mindscape? Dreamscape? Mindscape? The movie with Natalie Wood and Christopher Walken, where you were able to record a person's experiences and then play it back to other people. And they found a guy who had found a tape of, the tape was of a guy having sex with this absolutely stunning 21-year-old. And they found him on the couch basically near death because he was just playing the game again and playing the loop again and again and again. There's kind of a theme in William Gibson's kind of stories. I think Burning Chrome has got some of this in it, where you basically have a mental simulation. So here's the issue, right? Let's say you had a mental simulation, a video game, that was so good. It was so good that it was better than your reality. It was more immersive, and since you controlled it, it was better than reality. You were handsomer and stronger and richer, and you lived in a better house, and you lived in a better community, and you had a prettier girlfriend, and you're interacting with other humans who are also interacting through their avatars. And then what you find out is you basically end up staying in this world at the expense of the real world. Now, in Burning Chrome, I want to say, basically, I think one of the women in one of his stories was trying to earn enough money to get some, Brainstorm is a movie. They're making enough. She was trying to make enough money to get like enhanced eyes, or she wanted one of these, body modification things. So she basically was a prostitute, just checked out. She just wasn't there. And this kind of thing, when you can create an artificial reality, virtual reality is a term that's been widely disparaged, and rightfully so, because it was appallingly awful. But if you can create a virtual reality that's more attractive than the real reality, then a movie like The Matrix is actually kind of not far off. What do you do in a case like that? I mean, what do you do if you could come home and live in a better world than the world you live in? To me, this is a terrible danger. It's the ultimate narcotic. And when your fantasy life becomes more important than your real life, then we're in very dangerous territory, because then you literally become a herd animal. Your job is to go out and work, eat, and process waste so you can come back and live in this other world. Pretty soon, the government, for a period there, will just pay all your bills so you can stay home and do this. And once every 2 years, they'll have you literally reach across the room, put your fingerprint on a screen, and say that you voted for these guys, and then we'll continue to feed you and pump fluids into you, and you can spend the rest of your next 2 years as a surfer or a fashion model until they need you again. And then after a while, once they're fully empowered, nobody can resist anymore, then they'll stop feeding you. So you get this kind of thing, right? I don't run around with my hair on fire. It's not a subject that I'm particularly immediately concerned with, but I do see trends. Somebody just pointed out Vince Yoder, who showed up in the comment section, to point out Lieutenant Barclay and his hollow addiction. I am not a big. I didn't watch a lot of the later Star Trek things, but is Barclay the same guy who was the cowardly ensign? Is that Dwight Schultz? Did Dwight Schultz play Barclay? I played somebody who sounded like Barclay. Dwight Schultz is a real friend of mine, and a major patriot and a blast, and a really cool friend of mine, and I plan to put him in a couple movies. Dwight Schultz. In fact, I plan to put him in all my movies. I think Dwight Schultz is a freaking genius, real asset from A-Team. Anyway, let's move on.